I'm Chelsea Antrim Dennis, and I'm the Director of Production here at the Santa Fe Opera. I oversee everything from scenery to props to lighting to video, projections, costumes, wigs, and makeup. So in the year-round, that's about 20 people, 21 including myself, and during the full season, we're over 200 people in the production department. It's done very far in advance. We're currently talking about titles for 2025 and 2026. So it's there are things that are sorted out very far in advance, and we talk through as a group. But really, our leadership team and our general director and our music director and our director of artistic, our chief artistic officer, the three of them really kind of decide what's coming up for us to be able to have a well-rounded season in terms of music timeline, also different languages and different stories to make sure we're giving a good variety to our audiences, since many people come up and see multiple shows. We have 5 different productions that we do for our festival season, and it's a completely different director, design team, and cast that are in each of those 5 shows. But then we have our apprentice singer program, and they make up our chorus for all 5 of those shows. So sometimes they might be in 3 shows for the season, or they might be covering a principal role in another season, but they kind of fill in the rest of the production. It's a 4-week process from the first day of rehearsal to opening night. So they have about 2.5 weeks in the rehearsal room, and then they move to stage. And then they start during daytime staging rehearsals, and they add in the orchestra. And then that last week they do nighttime dress rehearsals with everybody involved. I mean, we sometimes do costume shop sales where we sell things from the costume shop. Yes, it's very well attended, so we don't have the costumes from all of the productions we've ever done, but we have quite a stock, and when we can do rentals, if another company wants to rent out a production of ours, so we do that often, or if they rent out just the costumes or costumes with the sets and props, so we do that as well. So our year-round staff in the costume shop is 3 people, and in the season it's 60 people. So we bring in dyers and stitchers and drapers and tailors and craftspeople to do specialty work, milliners to make hats, and then we have a whole separate wig and makeup department that make all the wigs as well. We have 2 apprentice programs. We have our singer apprentice program that makes up our chorus, and then we have our technical apprentice program. And there are about 80 technical apprentices, and they're in all of those different departments I mentioned earlier. So in the costume shop, that group of technical apprentices or costume apprentices, they might just be stitchers for the season, or they might also be stitchers and dressers. It depends on how long their contract is. So they get to come in and work with some of the best drapers in the industry and work with some of the best designers in the industry and learn a lot from 5 different productions and different styles of costumes. And then they get to go up and work with the artists and dress them and make sure that that process goes smoothly as well. So this is the Crosby Theater. So this is the 3rd of 3 theaters that have existed. They've always been on this location, but then in the company's history, the first one was about for 10 years, from 57 to 67. Then there was a fire, and then they built the second one. And then in 1998, they added the roof on. And then since then, in 15 and 16, we did expansions in the backstage area as well. So it's slowly grown to be the beautiful venue that it is. But the Crosby is named after the founder of the company, John Crosby. So this is the inside of the Crosby Theater. We seat just over 2,100 people, and then we also have another over 100 people that we could have in standing room. And then we have titles that are available for every patron on the seat back of the person in front of them. And that's a touch screen. That's a new system that we premiered in 2019. It's not turned on right now, but it is this system here. So basically, when an opera is sung in Italian or German or Polish, for that matter, we can do a translation in English or Spanish. So the Metropolitan Opera also has a system like this. I mean, there are a couple of other companies here in the country who have a seatback system, Opera Colorado, and there's a few others. But many other companies use the surtitle system where they have a screen at the top. That's more common because most opera companies aren't fortunate enough to own their company, their venue, I mean. So since we own our venue, we can do that. But if you are renting the venue, it's not something you could just install. So this is actually a memorial to the first theater. So when the first theater was built, the Moat, from what I understand, was much bigger, something over 6 feet maybe, or something like that. And when that burned down and they built this theater, they wanted a memorial to that first theater. And so that's what this is. There are many other versions of reasons of why this exists. Some people think it's to put moisture in the air for the singers or to pull the bugs away from the singers, but actually we're memorializing that first theater. Also to give a little space for the first audience member to the orchestra. It kind of helps. Just give a little breath. This is the whole stage. Yes, it is kind of a small stage for an opera house. And this whole front section up until just before where that rope is going, that is all one, well, it's 3 different lifts technically, that can lower and raise at different timings and speeds. So that's where the orchestra goes, and so the stage is just that section upstage of that. So it is quite small.
So the performers come out from either side because
Yes.
I see daylight back there. So
Yes.
it wouldn't be behind the curtain.
Correct. So we don't have any kind of a fly space here, which is very unique for a theater venue. And that's because we're outdoors and the wind and rain would ruin any kind of a system like that or any soft goods. So these are permanent walls that we have here. And they have doors within them. As you can see, some are open. But we can open all those doors and have 6 different entry points on either side of the stage. And then those back panels are individually operated panels that can open all the way, so that if you wanted to start the opera with the sunset behind the Jemez Mountains, you could do that if you wanted to. It's what we're famous for. We're famous for, the opera starts, the downbeat happens as soon as that sun sets behind those mountains. It's really beautiful. I have to say that first week of August, when we start performances at 8 p.m., the sun, sometimes we have to hold for like a minute or two to just make sure it's all the way down so it's not in anybody's eyes. The stage manager and then whoever's on duty, whether it's myself or one of my colleagues, we kind of look at the sun together, and are there clouds, or how are the eyes looking of the audience members to figure out exactly the right moment. But it is basically right when it sets that we do start, and it's beautiful to just have that tuning happen and that downbeat happen. So some people come to opera specifically for the acoustical experience, for that natural operatic voice combined with that live orchestra. And if that is your go-to, I suggest the center of the balcony. That is the best acoustical spot in the house, in my opinion. But if you're somebody who likes to see every detail, the costumes, the sets, every detail on their facial expressions, you're going to want to be in the center right up here. The wind baffles are a unique feature of our architectural design. They were created in hopes that they would baffle the wind and anything else. But what they kind of end up doing a little bit is the rain ends up kind of spraying. But they've become such a landmark for this venue and for pictures of this venue that they've become quite famous with the Santa Fe Opera. So, and that clear story really brings in especially if the sunset has a lot of oranges or pinks in it, you can really get those colors up here with that clear story at the sunset. My favorite last season was Barber of Seville. It is an opera that I have done many productions of that have not gone as well, and they just nailed it this year. The timing, the comedic timing, the musicality of it, the beauty of the production, everything from top to bottom. It was a great show.
Are you a nervous wreck when the opera's going on?
No, not at all.
Wondering, making sure that everything goes according to plan?
No, I think I was more nervous when I used to be a stage manager. Because I was running the show and calling the cues and making it all happen. But now there are so many amazing people that are in place to do that. The team here is incredible that No, I get to just relax. I send Maestro into the pit and make sure Maestro's good to go. Listen on headset and walk around and just kind of deal with anything that comes up.
So during the opera, you wander around with a headset listening, as opposed to sitting and watching. Why is that?
Because if anything's going on, it's going to be, for my world, it's going to be backstage. And so I want to be able to be there quickly to be able to manage anything. This summer, funny noises that we don't know where they're coming from will happen. We think that the big one that was a mystery for an entire performance actually ended up being somebody's hearing aid in the theater. And so we thought it was coming from one of our speakers, and so we were trying to fix it, but couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Anyway, so funny noises. If somebody gets injured, I'll deal with that so that the team can keep running the show. Somebody hurt their ankle this summer when they were just walking backstage and just misstepped. Just nothing major, but little things happen. Somebody hurt their arm when they were on stage. An artist that was on stage during kind of a fight scene, they ended up kind of knocking somebody next to them and hurt their arm.
And you have to get a fill-in.
Not depending on the part.
Yeah.
Depending on the part. Those were both roles that we were able to continue on without on stage. Or they would sing from backstage sometimes. The big thing that happened this season was the elevator at the back of the stage, which we'll go back and look at. It broke down this season. And we had the Falstaff set on stage, and we weren't able to get it off stage. And so we ended up doing a performance of Carmen on the Falstaff, on a deconstructed Falstaff set, and then we did a performance of Barber on the Falstaff set as well. It took about 48 hours to repair the lift. So, one of the more stressful. The show must go on, and everybody had a great attitude about it and did a beautiful job. Carmen on a deconstructed Falstaff set, it turned out was stunning. Our lighting team changed all the lighting focuses to adjust. Everybody just kind of stepped up and said, okay, let's figure out how to make this happen.
So being flexible and being able to adapt to changes, that would be important.
Absolutely, and especially when you're dealing with outdoor theater. When we have we had a crazy lightning and rainstorm that happened at a first orchestra dress rehearsal of one of the shows this season, and we were kind of ready in the wings at all times with towels and ready to stop the show or whatever we needed to do, but we were able to kind of keep going on. But things like that we monitor very closely to make sure that everybody's safe and that we can continue on safely. I love Tosca. It's one of my favorite operas, so I'm pretty excited for that production. I think the cast is going to be amazing. I think the design is stunning, so that one I'm really excited for. But all five, it's just such a nice variety that we have coming in. The Rusalka I'm very excited for. It was one that was slated for 2020 that we moved to this season. That since the original design presentation in 2019, I was excited about it. So I'm really looking forward to that one finally coming on stage. But all five are really going to be fantastic productions. We winterize the space. We have to turn off the water because it freezes here in the theater. And so we start winterizing next week. Starting from the youngest, we have a storyteller's camp that we do in the summer for young kiddos, and then we get into our high school Young Voices program, and college, and also in high school we have a Young Technicians program to help those young technicians where they actually work in our shops and with our staff to get to know how to work with different tools and that type of thing. And then moving on from there, we have our apprentice programs that we talked about, which is more college age for our technical program, as well as our singer program in the summer during the festival season. And then from there into adulthood and mentoring and journeyman positions and things like that. Pueblo Opera Cultural Council and our Pueblo Opera program. So two different programs where we work with our local Pueblos. Our Pueblo Opera program is when we bring in students from our local Pueblos to see dress rehearsals, and they come in varying different forms of transportation depending on how many people are coming. And so that is a really big program that's been going on for many decades now. And then our Pueblo Opera Cultural Council is a council that is part of the company who we meet with on a regular basis to talk about future planning and how we're doing future planning and what we're doing, and to incorporate their thoughts and ideas as we're moving forward. Then we have our Opera in the Park program, where we stream this season's shows to the local community. We did a streaming of Barbara of Seville in Albuquerque at the end of August, and we did Carmen and Barbara of Seville here in Santa Fe. Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think that as we're hoping to be coming out of the pandemic, I think we're still kind of figuring out what that looks like. In terms of our future planning, the company has many different ideas of things that we could do, but trying to really prioritize those things and fine-tune them is something that I would say is still in process. Preview dinners that happen down the hill in our cantina, where we have speakers that come and talk about the opera that night, and they even cater the menu and the wine pairing to go with the opera. But those are down in our cantina. It can accommodate many more people than the opera club could. So the tailgating, and you can also order food to bring, or you could bring up your own food, but the tailgating is quite a scene. I mean, it is almost competitive in the sense that everybody has their different style, and some people bring tablecloths and candlesticks and gourmet meals, and some people are there, in just cowboy hats and their boots, and they're ready to roll and come to the opera. And I think the tailgating is such a beautiful thing because it's open to everybody, and I mean everything is open to everybody, but I feel like that's just such an open experience where it is so down to earth, and you can just enjoy the beautiful surrounding mountains. So this is our stage manager's console. And so this is where the show gets called from. With everything turned off, it's hard to see it all, but they have many different cameras here and different channels for the communication, to be able to communicate with everybody. And then they have ability to adjust cameras and control them from here. And then they also have cue lights, which you can see around the stage to be able to cue the crew from downstairs in the basement, upstairs in the coves, anywhere backstage for any shifts or anything that happen on the stage with any scenery or anything. So they literally run, they even cue the orchestra when to enter the pit and when to tune. So they literally run every single thing from this console for the entire show.
Is there one person doing that?
Yes. So that was my background. So there's 3 different stage managers to cover all 5 productions of the season. So they rotate through. And then they also have assistant stage managers who run the deck. So they're telling people when to enter the stage, tell people when to hand off a prop, make sure people are changing their costume at the right time, and making sure they know if they have 30 seconds left. The stage manager does all that here. The assistant stage managers are more mobile, and they're on the deck, and they walk around with the musical score in their hands and make sure everybody knows where they need to be when.
So how many assistant stage managers will there be in a production?
Typically, you usually have at least 2, but the bigger the production, if you have people entering from the trap or from upstage or something, you might have to add 1 or 2. When I was stage managing, if somebody had a note or something for me, sometimes they would write it down for me so I could look when I had a moment. Or if we had to stop the show for a storm or something, we would try to I'd say, okay, the scene ends in 2 minutes, let's do it in 2 minutes, and we'd make a plan and get everybody ready to stop in 2 minutes. There are a few elements here that are not normal for an opera season. They are very much concert season. And we have these monitors that are on the edge of the stage in the front, and we have these speaker clusters that are hanging here, and then all of these lights on the truss above us. Those are all concert season elements. Edge of stage is actually here, and then you have your orchestra pit.
Okay, so where exactly is the conductor?
The conductor will be basically on this square here, but lowered down.
Yeah, right.
It's a very unique theater, as I mentioned, that we don't have the fly system, that these back panels open the way that they do, and that our side walls are structural pieces instead of soft goods that would fly in a normal theater. So this is our B lift, and I'll just say to please be careful. This railing is a temporary railing because we remove it when the lift comes up to stage level. Right now they're taking apart scenery from this season that we are moving on from. And so they use some of the chain motors from our coves up above to be able to lift things off and be able to take it apart. So this lift is how we get all of our scenery up to stage and down to storage in our basement. Before, our costume shop that grows to be over 60 people in a season. Right now on the racks you're seeing costumes from this last season that they're prepping to put away. So they're in the middle of what we call strike. Strike is when we are, much like the carpenters on the back deck right now are taking apart scenic units, we kind of take apart the costumes in the sense that, you know, we separate the underlayers from the overlayers and we sort them depending on if we're going to store it as a full production, as a show, or sometimes we're shipping it back to the company we rented it from, or sometimes different scenarios depending on the show and what needs to happen to those pieces. So we have a costume stock coordinator, and she also deals with our rental packages. So she left today to go to Vancouver to oversee a rental that's in Vancouver right now, but she's been overseeing the strike, and she brings in some overhire labor to help her. So they have an incredible organization system where they're able to find what they're looking for, whether it is stored as with the whole production and they're looking for a piece from a whole production, or whether it's part of their general stock and they know how to find it within their general stock. So it's organized in those kind of two different categories of either an individual piece or part of a production. It's saved in computers, it's saved in photos, so we have photos of every costume. We have a very significant photo archive, and then of course the hard pieces and hard copy lists as well. For underlayers, of course we do, and you know, for our chorus, we'll often pull from our stock and things like that. But for the most part, designers really want pieces as they designed them, and so we'll look in our stock and see if anything can support that design. But we really try to stay true to the designer's look and the overall look of the production. Our production of M Butterfly this season, our world premiere. And so much of this was hand done. Our costume director and her associate will go to New York next month in October, and they'll be there for about 5-6 weeks. And they'll make sure that they've purchased all of the fabrics, all of the buttons, all of the trim, everything that they need for every single costume for the whole season. So they'll do we call their New York shopping trip, and they'll be there, and then they'll ship everything back here so that by the time the new year comes, if there are packages that we need to send out to another shop to build, which we sometimes do for some chorus costumes, we'll send them all the materials and all of the measurements of the individuals, and they will build those costumes. And then anything that we're doing here on site, which is usually our principal costumes, because we make them specifically for that artist. When the artist arrives 4 weeks before opening, we usually have a mock-up for them to try on, and we can get the measurements just right, and then we can start cutting the real fabric. These are some of the pieces from Falstaff this season. Depends on how many pieces we need to get rid of, and it's usually a costume and prop sale. And so we didn't do in this year. Our last one was in 2019, and it was huge. This is from Falstaff as well. Oh, her little earring. This was the Fairy Queen. We build all of our wigs here in-house with real hair, and so ventilating, creating a wig thread by thread is a process that takes many hours, and so our staff works on them here and has stations and proper lighting and ventilation in here to be able to do that safely, which was a really important element of our renovations that we did a few years ago. You know, a benefit of our technical apprentice program and the fact that these young technicians are able to come in and work with real hair and to be able to do that. It's not something that most schools can provide. So it's a really great opportunity for them to be able to get that practice and that technique down.
That seems like the most labor intensive.
Absolutely.
Thing to do for a production.
It's a very small detail that matters so much. You know, we always notice when a wig doesn't look right, but when it's perfect, perfect for its period and for its artist, and it fits beautifully, and you don't notice it at all, nobody ever comments. But it's actually, that's the beauty of that work, I think. So we're underneath the stage now. And this is what we call the trap room, where we, if we ever need to use a trap in a show, we would have an elevator or stairs or whatever that show requires here in this space. Then this is our entrance to our orchestra pit. When that elevator is down, this is how they enter, and they can enter on the other side as well.
I can just imagine people rushing around down here. I mean, the audience has no idea.
That's right. And it's bustling.
How exciting just to be here.
Yes. So this is what we call our mez, which is where our props run crew operate from during the season. We have down here most of our hand props. So everything from any beer bottle you could ever need to any basket, all those types of small hand props that you would find in an opera, a lot of potion bottles. So we're ready. So this is where our props run crew operate out of. In terms of storage, though, they also have a warehouse that's off-site where they store furniture. So this is more just hand prop stuff. A lot of foam over here so that we could make anything, carve it out of foam and paint it. We use a lot of foam in prop and scenic construction. This is a carriage. This is from Daughter of the Regiment, or Fille de Régiment, that we did in, actually I'm not going to remember the right year, maybe 2017, could have been 16, that has been in a trailer in storage, and we took it out to make room in the trailer. So we're kind of debating on where to store it or if we can store it.
Will you use this again?
It's not currently slated for a future production. Sometimes
you can't get rid of it. I mean, you have to hold on to it, right?
It's kind of how we feel. But we made this here on site. I think the current thought is we would keep the wheels and the axles.
Oh, there it is.
It's a little bit covered in plastic to preserve it, but the carpet still looks nice, and the ruffle, it still looks really nice inside. So we do have some costume storage down here, and then the scenery that's down here right now, they're breaking apart the Falstaff that we're sending back to Glasgow. Oh yes, that's what did we name him? A monkey head fly, I think, or firefly monkey head, or something like that.
Was that in an opera?
That was in an opera. That was from Alcina. So our schedule in the summer is pretty rigorous, and so to have an on-stage rehearsal during the day and then a performance of a different show at night and then a different show on stage the next day, we have to do changeover of the set multiple times a day. So it ends up being quite a difficult schedule for our crews, and so to make the scenery move and have it be as light as possible is a huge priority for us, to make sure we're not taxing them more than we need to be. These are roller coaster pieces from Carmen because it took place in a rundown amusement park, and then a lot of other things. So we've got booths from Carmen, carnival booths from the amusement park, Falstaff pieces, things kind of all over the place down here. It's very busy. And then our Barber of Seville, which I mentioned to you earlier. These are pieces of the turntable that were part of Barber of Seville, and then the colonnades on the side. And actually all the scenery from shows that we own and rent out or will be doing in the future are in trailers off-site as well. So these are just the shows from this year. And then down there we have kind of longer term storage and lighting storage, and we have a machine down there that helps us carve out pieces. It's taken apart more now, right now, than it would be during the season because they have to break it down to smaller pieces to fit into trailers. Yeah. So they're in that process right now. So we are able to keep bigger chunks together during the season to help with the repertory schedule. A lot of them will do, you know, running at the gym or on treadmills or something or outside, but to try to just get used to the thinner air. If we ever need it, we do have oxygen tanks backstage to help people. It's rare that we use them, but we have. They're working on pieces right now for our community engagement show that we'll be doing next month at the Lensic. But we also have a piece in here from the Carmen from this last summer. But the best part I'm going to show you is my favorite. This beautiful skeleton. So it was supposed to be a haunted house in the amusement park that turned around and became Miss Pastia's bar. There's a few things that are out right now for 2023. This water barrel will be used because there is water in a couple of shows. I don't think that's a secret. So we've got the water barrel out of storage as we're ready because we're going to be needing it. But then the deer are from an old show. And this is our furniture shop, basically. It's our props carpentry shop. So we have a year-round props carpenter who's working on some pieces for our community engagement show next week. So they're prepping for that show. Some major benefits from the renovation a few years ago. We're expanding all of these shop spaces.
This is like a little city down.
It is. Our show next month is called This Little Light of Mine, and it's about Fannie Lou Hamer. That's it. And so you can see we already have some of the props up that are appropriate for that time period and the efforts that she made for voting rights in this country. And that's actually a body form that was hand carved. That's for a production of Rehearsal next season.
And it's hand carved out of styrofoam.
This is where our lighting staff works. They have an office here and one across the hall as well. But this is where all of our color is stored. And all of our materials needed for any specialty lighting elements that we create here on site. I mean, to give you an idea, I mean, these are just pre-cut pieces of color that they have available, but I mean, all of this is just color to be able to put into the lighting instruments. And it's filed away in all kinds of ways to be able to organize and find quickly.
And there's someone that specializes just in that?
There's a whole team of people, yes. And we have a lighting director, we have a master electrician, we have lighting supervisors, and then we have technicians, apprentice technicians, I should say, who run our spotlights for the season and who focus all of our lights. So it's very unique that we have to focus all of our lights during daylight. And so in about 90 minutes every single day, they refocus all of our lighting for the entire production. And they do it very quickly in daylight, which is one of the hardest things to do in lighting. So it's very common that a former technical apprentice in the lighting department here in Santa Fe is able to succeed immensely in their career because they know how to do that. To be able to focus a light in daylight is incredibly unique. They learn how to do it with a grid. And so they basically create a grid, which is not something that most theatrical companies do. They like put the setup on stage and then focus the light in that moment. But we do it with a completely empty stage and just a grid, and they learn how to focus on a grid. Which then, if you can take that into any theater in the world, you can literally focus a light anywhere. I mentioned before, Tosca is one of my favorite operas and some of my favorite music. So I can't help but be a little bit biased, but I do think the production will be stunning as well, and the casting is incredible. But I also think that The Dutchman is going to be incredible. That cast is stellar, and I think that music in this theater is going to be incredibly impressive. I could focus just on the pros of every single show. Then we've got Pelléas. I really think that the design for that production it's very, I would say, raw and totally appropriate for the storyline in a way that I think will be incredibly emotionally connective. I think for the audience it will be a piece that will be very thought-provoking and emotional. So I think that will be a very intense piece, but really beautiful on this stage and in that setting. And then the Rusalka I mentioned before, I'm beyond excited for. It was supposed to be in 2020, so I've been excited for this since 2019. The cast, I cannot wait to hear sing this music. I've always wanted to do a Rusalka. I've never done one before, and I think that this is going to be the best production of it. And then the last show is Orfeo, which is going to be incredibly impressive. It's going to be a spectacle, and I think that it's a new orchestration of Monteverdi that I think will have never been heard before anywhere else. So I think that's a reason to see that one as well.